LASARD is a great resource. And so we have Ali Kowitz and Chris Champagne, and they will be the presenters for LASARD. And you can read the descriptions for this session and their bios on page 3 and 4 of the conference booklet, which is linked in the chat. So Chris and Ali, will turn it over to you guys.
Great. So do we have the speakers? Oh, here we go. Great. Well, I'll echo Bambi, and it is actually now afternoon. So good afternoon. My name is Chris. I love that she said it right, Champagne, but I also go by Champagne, just depending on your preference. I'm okay with both. I'm a white older woman with blonde hair. I'm wearing red glasses, and I'm wearing a black and white striped shirt today. My background is early intervention and developing and running statewide professional development projects for teachers. I've been at LASARD since 2014. So I'm really excited. Ali and I are very excited to be part of the program today, and especially excited to be introduced by Bambi, as she said, who was a LASARDian before I was. So we are part of the Human Development Center, which is in the LSU Health Sciences Center in New Orleans. And we call it HDC. So HDC belongs to the network of University Centers for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, or UCEDs. And they are a national network. They are in all the states in the country. And it's a resource for people with developmental disabilities and their families. So LASARD is just one of the projects at the HDC. So our staff is now at 11 people, and we are pretty diverse in terms of well, in terms of lots of things, in terms of our backgrounds and experiences. We are currently serving 30 districts and networks across the state. We work collaboratively to help those entities plan and create action plans that are going to improve outcomes for students. So we represent the disciplines of special education, early intervention, school administration, behavior analysts, psychologists, occupational therapy. So we do have varied backgrounds, and that helps us to really collectively put our minds together and our experience together to do the best we can with the schools, networks, and districts who contract with us. So one of the things that we believe, and what I'm showing you right now, is really a hand-drawn picture of a Venn diagram, and it's 3 circles. And this is something we found on the web for the Center on Secondary Education for Students with Autism. And in each of the 3 circles, something is written, and where they intersect is what we would consider a pretty good life, right? So everybody needs what's in these circles, and what is in them is somewhere to go, someone to love, and something to do. And that is something that we believe wholeheartedly that everybody deserves. We talk to teachers about that, and I think if this is kind of your guiding principle when you're engaging with individuals with disabilities, then you will target what you do to help them for life after school, to have that longitudinal view of what they are going to need to have enviable lives when they leave school. So there are several things that are kind of embedded in how we work. And these are things that have been embedded in LASARD for some for a very long time. And some are things that are fairly new to our model as we've looked at continuous improvement in how we can work the very best we can with our contractors. So one is collaboration. We wholeheartedly believe in collaboration. Our team is a collaborative team, and that is the first thing that we try to model when we encounter the schools or districts or networks for the very first time. I think when we look at how we work, we understand, and I learned this a long time ago working in the USED system, that quality process is important if you want quality outcomes. And so having a collaborative process is the first kind of pillar of you. The second one is growth mindset. And this one is something that we incorporated and studied about 3 years ago. But it's just the idea of always looking for continuous improvement, believing in the capability of individuals to change. We believe that about our teachers, and we try to instill that in them to believe about their students. We provide leadership in research practices, and Bambi talked about that a minute ago. So as we're looking at their systems and developing action plans, we want to show them and be leaders in having them use research and translate that research into practice, do things that are proven to work. And then the last one is positive outcomes. The most positive outcome that we can think of is that the students are included and are in every single environment in that school with everybody all of the time. And we want to build their capacity to be able to support that to happen for their students. So our model of services involves several things. First of all, like I said, teaming and collaboration. That's something that we want to model and coach throughout our time with schools and districts. We also have studied and have infused motivational interviewing into our process. And motivational interviewing is just ways to establish a collaborative relationship and partnership to motivate teachers to make change in their practice. And we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. The other thing that we include in our model is implementation science, because implementation science says that people don't change just because you tell them about something different to do. They change because you've provided them coaching and you've shown them ways to do things differently. So we understand that just professional development in and of itself is very unlikely to create changes in practice. But going into those classrooms and showing them and providing them with research and resources and modeling is much more apt to create change. And we'll show you some data around that, and Allie will show you that later on. And then the last thing is trauma-informed practice. And we try to help teachers to understand how trauma can affect learning and behavior and help them to learn some better ways to support that. It seems like every school year there is an occurrence, whether it's weather or COVID or something that adds to the stress and trauma of the students that they're teaching. Also, many of those schools are in high poverty areas where there is constant stress in the homes for various reasons. And so for teachers to begin to view behavior and learning through a broader lens by taking into consideration trauma and stress is something that we also try to do with our model. So now we're going to give you a couple of testimonials from people that we've worked with. And the first one is a gentleman named Sean Crochet. and he is in St. Charles Parish schools. And he's going to talk to you a little bit about how we went in and helped build capacity.
So I've enjoyed and appreciate being on the LASARD district team for our district in St. Charles Parish Public Schools, because I'm getting to grow my capacity. Having our wonderful coaches, they know the resources, they know the research-based practices, and I think they're able to give us the tools that our teachers need for the benefit of our students. As a facilitator who doesn't have a background in students with autism and related disabilities, this has really helped me because they've done the research, they know their field, and they're able to point myself and my teachers in the right direction. So that's why I've been very appreciative to be a part of our LASARD district team.
So in that district, we focused on building their district team to go in and do the LASARD model with the teachers, the LASARD model of support and coaching with their teachers. So here's another one, and this testimonial is from a teacher and a para where we went in and the focus was on their classroom and particular students.
So since you've been coming in, we've noticed that a huge change in our student. He has had zero behavior. We've had zero behavior issues out of him since we implemented the choice board. We give him choices. He chooses what he wants. He is eager to work. Like, we're so excited about it. Like, It's been great. He pulls us over to his desk. He wants to work, and seriously, zero behavior issues. It has been wonderful.
Life-changing.
It has been life-changing. It's been great.
Life-changing.
That is fantastic. And
Yes.
with me, I have Miss D and Miss Jody at Delhi Charter School.
So based on what districts and networks need, we developed packages for them. And when we were first listed as vendors, we had just set packages, and it didn't take us long to realize that those would have to be customized. So when we go in and sit with districts, we try to find out a lot about their needs and their culture of their school or district or network. And then we put together something that's customized to meet what they say they need. So it would be training sessions or professional development, the number of communities of practice, and Allie's going to explain more about that model and what it is, how many coaching sessions, and how many online registrations. And we'll show you some specifics about that. So here's an example of a mid-size, what we would consider as a mid-size package, and this was a district package. So that means we went in and worked with a district team to coach and mentor them in how to coach and mentor. And these were the deliverables that were parts of that package. So there were 9 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, and 2 high schools that we were focusing on. And the goal was to build the capacity of that district team to support those schools and the teachers and staff in them. So there was an initial planning meeting with the district team, and sometimes we help them put a district team together. It may not already exist. They may not have an entity like that. We would then also meet with the principals from the schools that'll be involved so that they can understand and collaborate with us. So we would have monthly district team meetings. And in this package, there were 10 basic PDs. And what that means is these are things we already have developed that they would be selecting. And then this was 100 coaching sessions. And they were targeting 10 teachers with 10 coaching sessions each. And then they had logins to be able to take the modules that are available to them on the website. So the next one is just an example of a much smaller package. This one was just for a single school. So it can be small like this. This was just a school that was pre-K and elementary. And what they wanted from us was to just build skills in these teachers to support students with disabilities. And one of the disabilities that they wanted them to be able to support were one of the disability categories that they wanted to build skills around was autism. So again, there's always that planning meeting that gets everybody on the same page. And then there were only 2 basic trainings and a few coaching sessions, which they focused on new teachers. So the challenges that we had is like, when we go in, what are we going to do to actually ensure that we can impact teacher practice? What's going to make them change what they do something different? How do we document those changes? And then how can we collaborate more effectively with those administrators so that things happen, they're aware of them? So the first one, what makes them change their behavior? It's motivation. How are we going to motivate teachers? By building positive collaborative relationships with them. And what does the research say? What's evidence-based? And that's motivational interviewing. So we decided to include that as part of our model. The second challenge, how are we going to document changes so that district, schools, classrooms, and students were aware of the positive outcomes? We decided that program evaluation, we were going to continue to evaluate what we were doing and see what was working and what wasn't. And so what was the framework that we were going to use that we could find that would work for us? And we decided implementation science, again, the notion that not just professional development will change behavior, but we have to pair it with hands-on learning and coaching. And then lastly, is there an evidence-based way that we can use to document those things? And we just developed various tools using observation as one, surveys, self-assessments, and we'll show you some of those. So again, it's always a big goal for us and for schools. I mean, good consultants kind of work to put themselves out of business, right? You don't want to just come in and leave. You want to leave things in place. And so part of our model is to really stress developing systems and methods that will stay in place and help them sustain what we're trying to teach them to do and coach them to do. So one of the things that, like I said, is a hallmark for us is good communication. Looking at, how are teachers communicating with related service providers? How are they communicating with administrators? What do those school teams look like? Can we put those together? What are the classroom people teams look like, and how can we put those together and help them? How do they move those that communication up to the superintendent? Are they aware of what's going on in the schools and what schools are doing to make their services better? To the board, to the State Department of Education, we're a vendor and we have to provide data to them as well. But also, looking at our own practices and our own ways of doing things to make sure that the outcomes are what we want them to be. So here are the data sources that we've developed and used. At the district or network level, we have an action plan, like a visioning in action. We do surveys with them, like pre-work with us and then post-work with us to see where there have been changes or gains or improvements. We do needs assessments at the beginning. We would do that with the district teams to look at, or the schools to look at, what's going well, what can we build on, where are the needs, where do we need to focus, what would you like to be different? At the teacher level, we do a classroom observation, and with stressing to them that the first line of defense is looking at that environment. It's not looking at an individual student and what they are not doing or doing. It's looking at your environment and making sure that the supports are in place for everybody, every kid in that room to be successful. We, based on that classroom observation, we sit with the teacher, we make coaching plans for them. And we also do pre-post surveys, and we'll look more at those in a minute. And then at the student level, we can do goal attainment scales, and we're going to look at those too. So let's look at our coaching project process. So it is a collaborative process, and we've kind of talked about this earlier, and designed to kind of strengthen the person's motivation and commitment to change. So motivational interviewing is kind of like the Maya Angelou saying that when people know better, they do better. And in order for them to kind of get to the point where they're ready to make those changes, they have to have a vision in mind, know that they're going to get support to create that vision, and then feel confident enough to go ahead and make the changes. So the old model is, for coaching is you go in with your clipboard, you decide what needs to be different. You tell the teacher what that is. Often they resist because they may not have the skills or the knowledge to do what you're asking them. And then change is unlikely, and they will view you as possibly a negative. With motivational interviewing, you are sitting with them, helping them envision how they would like things to be. What you want to do is have them begin change talk. I'd like this to happen. I'd like it to be this way. And then you can facilitate them to come up with some ideas about, well, what do you think it might take? And when it's done that way, collaboratively, supportively, you're much more likely to get change. So here's what's involved in our coaching model. And we've talked about some of this. We send an introductory email to the teacher, letting her know that we're coming. And then we ask things like, if I could help you with one thing, what would that be? Again, we're trying to get them invested in it. I'm here for you. Let's start with what you need. Is there a student-specific challenge that you have? So sometimes there are classroom concerns, sometimes it's student concerns. Following that initial email, we will schedule a pre-observation meeting where we go over what they said, just to make sure. Let me make sure I understand what you're at, what you would like from our work together. And the next thing is, then we set up a time convenient to observe. And again, we're looking at the environment. We may, based on the initial interview, be looking at some other things. If it's a specific student request, then besides the classroom observation, we may be taking data on a specific student. So there are there are a few different tools that we might select to have with us that we would explain to the teacher prior to coming, so that they felt comfortable with what we were going to do and knew exactly what the observation was going to involve. Post-observation, what we like is to be able to hopefully sit with them right after, but sometimes that's not always possible with their complicated schedules. But we do email within 48 hours with the written suggestions we have. We always start with the positive, what was going well, what we were impressed with, what certain students were doing that was positive, and then we'll make some recommendations and provide resources for them. And then we would want an in-person or Zoom way to go for those recommendations, because we want to make absolutely sure that we have met their needs. And again, incorporate that MI. Is this what you needed? Is this what you think you wanted? What can I do different? Again, making sure they understand this is a collaborative process going on. And also at that point, we may do a coaching plan for them, which looks kind of like this. where we would have the goal at the top, and then we would step it out. It's kind of like a much less complex version of an IEP, where we would step out what we hoped to accomplish with our work together. And it also gives us a place to keep data every time we go. And then we can do a goal attainment scale also with the teachers. This is a scaffolding. So if we have picked a particular goal, where is the teacher currently, and how would we like to see, what would the benchmarks be? And we scaffold all the way to exceeds the goal. So they can see what the steps are going to be along the way and what evidence-based strategies we're going to be using to help support that.
And Chris, I'm sorry, one moment. This is the interpreter. I don't have spotlighting capability because I had to leave and rejoin. Can someone spotlight the interpreter, please? Thank you. Okay, ready.
Okay, so again, I'm going to show you on the next slide our classroom checklist. It focuses on the environment, and it looks at whether they're using visual supports, what kind of positive preventive behavior strategies they're using. Is there sensory support for students who need it? What kind of instructional strategies are they using? Do students have individualized supports if there's a need? Are there strategies being used to promote communication and to support communication kids that need it? And then lastly, like I said, things that are going to prevent student behavior. So we look at, are the students engaged and how are they being supported in that environment? We have a way to score it when we first go in, and then we can score it again as the end of the scheduled coaching sessions come to an end, and we can see improvement in that way. Goal attainment scale, again, is just a scaffolding, and we can do that with students as well as the teachers. And so it's just a practical, easy way to collect data and to map out your plan for what you want to accomplish. And here's an example of one where this was a student that, this was on a specific student, and this was a student that was, when asked a question by the adult, would verbally respond with a 4-word response. And they wanted to build on the communication skills, and that scaffolded out. So it's just a table from 0 to 4. 0 is the current performance, and then 1, 2, 3 are your scaffolded description of how you want that to improve. At level 3, that's your annual goal. And then 4 gives you an opportunity to chart if the student exceeded the goal that you had in mind for them. So it's just a simple table. Allie, you can move on that. That's just another example. So let me just say that when we put the data together at the end of the year last year, when we looked at that, all of the students we had targeted made improvement. 48% of them got to a level 4, which meant they exceeded expectations. 41% met their annual goals. And only 1% got to level 2. So the majority either met their annual goal or exceeded it.
All right, thank you, Chris. I'm Allie Kowitz. I am a late 30s female wearing glasses and a yellow cardigan with long brunette hair. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to jump in and start talking about some of those services that we do in addition to the coaching model that Chris described. So this first part is communities of practice. Our communities of practice, or COPs, are solution-focused learning. We meet with a consistent group of educators for 6 one-hour sessions to learn on whatever that COP topic might be. I'm going to show you some examples in a moment of some things that we've developed. And then we jump into a brainstorming session to solve a problem together. COPs are a really great way to bring educators from across the district together to learn from one another, because they're done virtually over Zoom. So for some of those people that might not get to collaborate with colleagues that teach the same types of classes or students, this is a really good way to bring them together so that they can learn from each other. So the way the COP process works is that we have a presentation of the topic, whatever that might be. It could be communication skills or something behavior related or academic instructional strategies. We then jump into the problem solving session after that, where the presenter gives an overview of the problem or the question. This is something they might be struggling with. They present us with the necessary background knowledge. And then they frame a question for the group to consider while we are doing this brainstorming. The group will then ask the presenter clarifying questions. So they'll ask specific things about that information that was presented in order to gain a better understanding of the problem. The questions should be brief and factual questions. Then the group discusses the problem that was presented. So we could discuss potential next steps. We could discuss ideas or other considerations. And during this time, the person who presented the problem is just silent and listening and taking notes. Finally, the facilitator will summarize what was discussed, and then the presenter is going to reflect back on what they heard and what they learned, and they're going to choose at least one of the strategies that was developed in the group discussion to try. The LASARD facilitator will follow up with the presenter to see how it's going, to offer support. And then at the end of the COP sessions, we will recap all of those presentations throughout the 6 sessions to follow up to see how things were going. So these are just 3 different COP topics that we have, and you can see how each of the sessions are broken up. We have a lot, probably close to 20, maybe 25 topics, and it's always growing based on the needs of our district. So these are just some ideas that we use to help districts generate ideas of what they might want to talk about. So like social communication, the 6 sessions are broken up into social communication characteristics, core and fringe vocabulary, visual supports for communication, using peer supports, IEP social goals, and visual supports for social interaction. So you can see we also have some on for the high school level for post-secondary transitions and self-advocacy skills, supporting behavior. We have lots of different topics, and they're actually all listed on our website for you to see. We also have a lot of professional development topics. Chris mentioned earlier when she was talking about the district packages and school packages that one of the schools chose training options from our basics. So the basics are things that are just kind of beginner level. Where are we entering with the school district? What do these teachers need to know? And they cover things like the school, the classroom environment, communication supports, executive functioning supports, teaching functional skills, autism 101, and positive and preventative behavior strategies. So as we know through our action planning that schools do need more than just the basics. So over the years, we have developed a lot of customized topics, and these customized topics, again, are growing every single year when we learn more from the districts. So you can see from this choice board of menu, we have a lot of different things to choose from. All of our PDs are designed utilizing universal design for learning strategies, adult learning methodology, and we make sure that they are engaging and interactive. We also always provide resources that teachers can walk away with and use in their classroom. Sometimes, if time allows, we even do make and takes as a portion for our professional development. And make and takes are really great because that helps build the capacity. We are just giving them the resource to use. We're teaching them how to make it and how to individualize it for their students. So the teachers are given an opportunity to make them and practice using them in a make and take session. So we want to talk about how all of this has worked for us. What has our impact been across the state? Like Chris said earlier, we are in 30 districts or charter networks and 190 schools throughout the state this past school year, the 2022-23 school year. So you can see from our colored in map where we were, and this upcoming school year, we're going to have even more purple spots colored in because we have gained some new districts. We're very excited about being able to have such a reach across the state because our impact has been so great for schools and districts and teachers, and especially the students that we are impacting through interacting with all of those adults. So we had over 3,000 professionals attend one of our training sessions last school year. These could be district level folks. They could be classroom teachers, paraprofessionals, related service providers, pupil appraisal staff. We do not limit our professional development to just teachers. We really are trying to train everyone in a school district as they allow us to come in and do that. At the end of all of our training sessions, we ask that our participants complete a satisfaction survey. And last school year, 98.2% of our participants were satisfied or highly satisfied with the training that they received. And then last school year, we coached 750 educators. We had a very high impact in one-on-one coaching. And again, educators could be district level team members, related service providers, paras, teachers, any staff that interacts with children. So we'd like to share a couple of success stories. We have 4 to share, and we'll just kind of give an overview, the supports the facilitator chose to put into place, and then the outcome. So for our first story, our LASARD facilitator coached an uncertified second-year teacher who had some assistance throughout the day from paraprofessionals. This classroom had 8 students with varying communication needs, in addition to significant needs with mobility and behavior. This teacher was overwhelmed and unsure how to create a cohesive classroom environment, unsure how to get organized, and how to create schedules for the adults and the children in the classroom. The facilitator focused on helping the teacher with classroom organization so that the day was more predictable and more structured for both the students and the adults in the room. She created a whole class daily schedule, which was posted on the wall. She also created an individual schedule for the paras and teachers so that it was clear as to who was working with which student, what they were working on, and what time of the day they were working on those things. The teacher also labeled areas and items throughout the classroom to promote communication and to make the environment more understandable for the students. The first then visual worked really well for one of the students, which is up here, whereas another student was able to utilize a more sophisticated schedule to work through the day. And then this student schedule, they just moved the icon from to do to finished as they work through the schedule. The teacher also incorporated scripts throughout the classroom to help build those communication skills. So for some outcomes, the teacher, it was reported by the facilitator that the teacher is returning next year, and she has gained a lot more confidence in working with the students and creating a very positive classroom environment. One student learned to transition to activities without prompts by using a schedule. The structure that was built and the clarity provided by that print-rich environment supported by those visuals, led to an overall decrease of frustration and aggressive behaviors. Academic instruction improved with the use of task boxes and file folders. The teacher was able to teach students individually and target their IEP goals. And according to progress monitoring, all the students improved in their literacy and math goals by the end of the year. Our second success story, this was to a 3-year-old classroom, and there are a lot of moving parts and expectations, and nothing was really clear to all of the students. There were 3 students who cried at random times, and they could be heard down the hall. Sometimes they didn't understand what they needed to do, and at other times it was because they didn't want to stop the preferred activity that they were doing. Sometimes the crying would last for extended periods of time. Overall transitions in the class were not smooth and took 5 minutes or longer as the teacher tried to redirect the students on where they needed to be or tried to attempt to stop the crying. And besides the 3 crying students, others were confused. When the teacher directed students to get to their groups, several students were unsure of what groups they were in, and the teacher ended up telling students where they needed to line up. Once lined up, the students who were supposed to work with the teacher ended up in centers and vice versa. When it was time for lunch, several students didn't know where they were supposed to line up and had to be taken to their lunch line spots. All of the supports in this classroom were focused on visuals to help the students better understand the environment and how to follow expectations. In the middle, here we go. On the middle of the first visit, the facilitator asked the teacher if she had any tape and used the tape to mark boundaries for the students who were unsure of their areas and who wandered around the classroom. On the second visit, the facilitator worked with the teacher to support the transition by encouraging the teachers to create visual supports to help the student know where to line up. The teacher had numbers 1 to 4 on the floor, but she extended that for all of her students who needed it. By the third visit, the teacher took the information she learned about visual boundaries and used the tape to divide the classroom rug so that each student knew where they were expected to sit. On the 5th visit, the facilitator coached and modeled for the teacher to use a transition countdown to prepare the students for transitions and hope that the supports in knowing how much time was left before moving the activity would help them transition. So some outcomes was that there was a decrease in transition time. The transitions were much smoother for the students and the crying was eliminated. Our third success story, this is a high school teacher in a self-contained classroom with 3 adults and 5 students. Many of the students were not engaged in the class lessons or activities. The instruction was not differentiated for the different learning needs. And one student spent most of the day in his safe area. He would refuse to participate in class and would engage in challenging behaviors. And he had some visual supports in place, but they were not reinforced on a regular basis. And he didn't have a functional form of communication. The teacher really wanted support in teaching a whole group lesson to all of her students during first period. So after talking to the teacher about the activities that should take place during first period, she shared that the students typically work on the hygiene checklist upon arrival and then the morning meeting. The facilitator and teacher decided that the morning meeting would be a good lesson to start with, as they can incorporate academics, communication skills, and functional skills. The morning meeting lesson plan was planned with an interactive PowerPoint and activities. The students had a low-tech morning meeting binder to help them follow along and participate during each component of the lesson. By the end of the first part of the lesson, the students built the date on the front of their binder. Some students also had pre-programmed communication device to give every student their own voice during the lesson. And the teacher and facilitator also wanted the students to learn and better understand the weather outside and how to make a choice of what to wear when getting ready in the morning. And the students made a prediction of the weather outside by using the predictable chart writing strategy. They then watched the weather forecast from the news to check their predictions. And needless to say, the students were very engaged, and some of them participated, or all of them participated in some capacity during that morning meeting lesson. As far as the student who didn't want to leave his safe area, he seemed very interested in what was going on during morning meeting, and the team decided to encourage him to sit with the group with his peers. They used a visual timer app to kind of get a baseline of where he was. He started out with 15 seconds with the group, and by the end of the first month, he was with the group for the entire lesson. And finally, we have our last success story is this 14-year-old male who was not independent in using the restroom. The teacher was new to teaching students with significant disabilities and was not sure how to set up those goals. A significant amount of the coaching involved conversations regarding presuming competence, and the teacher embraced the concept of presuming competence and became positive that her student could become independent in multiple ways. So the facilitator created a task analysis to break the task of using the restroom down into discrete steps. Picture symbols were used because the student was a non-reader. The task analysis was also designed so that each step could be removed as the step was completed. Prompt and prompt fading are an evidence-based instructional strategy that was implemented. Because students can become easily prompt dependent, the teacher was careful to fade back or use the least intrusive prompt so that the student could gain greater independence. They started working through a very intensive schedule of going to the restroom every 30 minutes. Eventually, he was having successful trips to the restroom, and finally, the student initiated going to the restroom independently. So this is the goal attainment scale that was used. He was able to remain dry during scheduled visits and initiated that independent. And he did far exceed his goal that was written in that goal attainment scale. So we've had a lot of success stories. Those are just 4 of many, but we asked our facilitators to share some, and we are proud of the work that they have done. Some other resources we wanted to share. We have our website, LASARD.org. And if you click on online resources there, you're going to be brought to a plethora of resources, and we have a lot of new resources on there just this summer. You can find things like a daily schedule we mentioned that is really helpful to look at for students. We have lots of different examples of classroom expectations. So this one is a visual of sitting expectations. We have them for lining up and many different things. We have communication supports like these scripts, and we can teach the students to use them, like I agree with you because, I don't agree with you because, and these are visual prompts to help the student learn those communication skills and social skills of taking turns in conversation. And then we have our first, then, next, or now, next, then schedule. This one, you could either handwrite or use icons to say, now we're going to be doing this. Next, we're going here, and then here. And if you have a student who is conscious of time and likes to know how long things are going to last, this one actually has a place where we can say how long things will take. Chris and I would love if you could if you have the ability to scan the QR code with your phone and take the survey for us. We enjoyed being able to present at the Go To conference today. We had a lot of fun prepping for it and reflecting on all of the good we've done this past school year. And if you have any questions or want to contact us in the future, here is our email addresses, link to our website, and where you can find us on social media. We have a very active social media presence on Facebook and Instagram. We are constantly sharing new resources for families and teachers. And we have monthly webinars that are free that you can attend. We call them Lunch and Learn. So you can be on the lookout for those. Lots of different topics throughout the year. Thank you.
Thanks, Allie and Chris. We do have a few questions and answer, well, in our Q&A, some questions. It sounds like the strategies you work on with teachers could act like universal precautions. Do you find that when implemented, they help all students in the class, not just the autistic students?
Oh, yes, definitely. So because we do so much with universal design for learning, we know that these supports that we might put in place for one student, they do help many students. And teachers realize that they can take this support and apply it to this student and this student. And then really, especially when Chris was talking about environmental changes, making those small environmental changes can have a huge impact for all students. Chris, do you want to add?
Well, I was just going to say, we tell them that those strategies are important for all students, but that they are absolutely essential for some students. So that's kind of the way we phrase it when we go in.
And can y'all put up the QR code again?
There we go.
And then we had a comment for, I do support all of that, and we need to keep update on this program due to the fact that it can be good for the students of Louisiana, and also make sure everyone gets the support to have the skills through high school.
Thanks. We agree.
Sweet.
Well, okay, how do you get help for your child's teacher without hurting her feelings?
Well, that's really interesting. I think if I were trying to get help from the teacher and I had been listening today, I would just go to her and say, you know what? I just heard these two women talk the other day. They're from LASARD Project. And guess what? There's all this free stuff you can get. And goodness knows teachers need free stuff. And give them the website and say, you know, maybe some of these things can help us with Mary or whatever. You may not even need to take it that far, but maybe you can start there.
And I'll just add in as a parent of a young man with a disability, with autism, and had utilized, as I said, I worked for LASARD 10, 15 years ago. I would actually sometimes create those things for the teachers and use them in my home and show, so showing that you realize that teachers have a lot, and nowadays they have even more on their plate. But as parents, if we're showing, is best practice, that collaboration that Ali, Chris talked about at the beginning. So using those tools across environments, which includes in the home, it not only will help the student, but it also helps the teacher to maybe get those things implemented, quicker in the classroom, maybe with more fidelity, have that communication. Is it working at home? Is it working at school? I think just take the initiative and do it yourself if you're able to do so as a parent.
Great idea. Yeah.
Let's see, we have. So just getting a lot of feedback about thanks for sharing, amazing, excellent presentation. I concur with all of that. Really thank you guys. And again, we're gonna link all the resources that you send to us in the conference schedule, so people can have access to that anytime. And as we close up, just want to thank you again, Ali and Chris, and just to remind everyone that we have the next session will begin at 1:15, and you are all welcome to remain logged on during the break. Thank you, guys.